I'm going to try and show you how the card cheats cheat in Las Vegas. Earlier on you saw one method of doing it. We're going to show you a second method. Watch, the aces go on top of the deck. If you don't believe that, you can check them, but they really do go on the top of the pack, am I right? Now, in every card game, you'll have to start by giving the cards a couple of cuts. Is that fair? Now, as you can tell from my accent, I'm English, and when we shuffle cards in England, we shuffle overhand like this. You probably don't do this in this country, do you? No? This is how we do it. In your country, you call it a riffle shuffle, am I right? Or a faro shuffle, something like that? Yeah? I'm going to do it in the hand so you can see this panning out exactly. Can you tell me, is that a thorough shuffle?
Yeah.
I mean, they are mixed, aren't they? There's a couple
Really
not
good.
quite mixed there, so I'll lose those. And look, watch the handling here. Can you square those up for me? Make sure they are thoroughly square. Make sure there's no kind of arrows or bends or anything like that. Make sure they're square. I'm going to just do something that very few people do, and that is I'm going to cut to the aces one by one with one hand. Ready for this?
Ready.
With sleeves slightly rolled up. The first ace, if I get this correct, the first ace should be right there, ace of hearts. Thank you. One high and one low, I'd have missed. Let's do this again.
Do it.
The second, do you want to square them up again, or do you trust me?
I'll square them up again. I don't really trust you.
Nobody trusts me, I don't know. The second ace, a little deeper. That should be the ace of diamonds. No ace, no ace. Thank you. I can do it again without even looking. Yeah? Do you want to square them or do you trust me?
I trust you.
Okay, without even looking, folks, the third ace, without looking, is exactly, if I get this correct, 15 cards from top. What are you dying for me to do right now? Prove it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's the ace of spades. Thank you. There's no ace there. There's no ace there. And the last ace is the hard one because there's only one left in the deck. The ace of clubs. With a little bit of flourish and a little bit of flair, I should be able to cut right here, halfway through the deck, and that should be the ace of clubs. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Paul Gordon here, and this is a Penguin download of Easy Ace Estimation, a very old routine of mine. We'll talk about the credits about that later, but let's just teach it to you for starters. You'll have seen the performance already. The four aces are openly displayed and placed on the top of the deck. Now, you could perform this trick in two different ways. You could either start with a shuffled deck and cull them to the top of the deck, or have them out with a trick prior and then go into a display of card control. It's actually pseudo card control, but to the layman, card control is card control. So the aces are out of the deck from a trick prior, a four ace trick. Openly display the four aces on the top of the deck in any order whatsoever. Reiterate that they really are there. And then you start by giving the deck a false cut. Now the false cut I give is the Frank Thompson three-way false cut, and I've been using it as a four-way false cut for years. It looks a little bit better, I believe. I'll move so you get a better angle at this. Remember, the four aces are on top, and you're going to give the deck a false cut. I'll perform it first, then I'll teach it to you. This is the false cut, and I'm sure many of you know it, but for those who don't, it looks pretty. I'll break it down for you. So, four aces on the top of the deck. I'll turn them face up so you can see how this thing pans out. Your right hand, excuse me, holds the deck in biddle grip. Now, biddle grip is generally with the four fingers right over the full deck, but this is slightly modified. It's a loose biddle grip is the technical term for it. It releases the forefinger here, so the forefinger can pick up the top half of the deck like so. The forefinger comes onto the edge of the deck, breaks the deck somewhere about centre, picks up on that half of the deck, and then kicks it to the left like that. And it kicks it as far as the left hand can grab that half by gripping this outer left corner in the crotch of the left thumb and first finger. So it kicks over and is held like that. So let's go back to that again. The right hand holds the deck, the forefinger kicks up half of it, and it's taken in the left hand, base of the thumb and the finger like so. So that is the original top half of the deck. Now, the second part. The right hand kicks over half of the remaining cards, like so. Those go on top of the left-hand section, but as you place them, a break is held by the little finger here. I'm pointing to the little finger here. So you kick over half, and there is the break. There is the break. This section here, which is the original bottom quarter of the deck, goes onto the table. You pick up this half of that original bottom half, so that goes back to position, as it were. And with the remainder here, you kick over the top half back into the left hand, and the second section goes back where it ought to be, and the final rock goes back to position. So let's just do that again. I know you can rewind this, but let's go back to that again. So kick over the top half. That's the original top half now in the left hand. The right hand, you kick over half of those onto the left-hand section, but as you do, you catch a break. You instantly drop the bottom quarter to the table. The third section goes back to situ. You kick over half the remaining ones into the left hand. Those go there, and the final quarter go back on top. So in real time, it looks like this. It's a false cut. So you can do any false cut if you will, but that's Frank Thompson false cut. It was originally published as a three-way false cut, but this is a four-way false cut. I think it's the nicest looking cut you can do. It's very quick as well. Now, so for all intents and purposes, those aces are lost. Now, as you probably can tell from my accent, I'm English. So the pattern makes sense what I'm going to say here. You can reverse it if you're from America or whatever country you come from. So the four aces are on top. I then say, where I live in England, we shuffle cards overhand like this. And you're going to do the jog shuffle, but you're going to add 3 cards on top of the ace in jog shuffle off, then add 3 more on top of the aces, shuffle off. So you do this. And as you do it, you say, in England, we shuffle like this. It's an overhand shuffle, which is a demonstration of how we shuffle cards. If you're American, you can say, in England, this is how they shuffle. So you run 3 cards, 1, 2, 3, in jog the next one, and shuffle off, pick up the break, and shuffle up to the break and throw the rest on top. That's the first part of the shuffle, and then do 3 more. 1, 2, 3, in jog, continue the shuffle like so, and you end up with 3, 4, 5, 6 indifferent cards on top of the aces. Now, here's an easier way of doing it without the shuffle. So let's go back to position. The 4 aces are on top, and you've given the deck the Frank Thompson cut, like I taught. You then say, if I give the deck a cut, there should be no aces anywhere near the bottom, and I've just displayed 6 cards. Okay? Let's just say, as I said, there should be no aces anywhere near the bottom. I'm displaying 6 cards. I put them back, and I catch a break beneath them. I then double cut that lot to the top. So double cut by cutting half the deck onto the 6 cards. The remainder, you've now got those 6 cards on top of the deck. This is very cheeky, what I'm going to show you now. Turn the deck face down and say, and there should be no aces anywhere near the top. It's the same 6 cards they saw beforehand, but they won't recognise that. It's a sneaky way of getting 6 cards on top of the aces if you don't want to do the jog shuffle, which I just taught. So you've now got 6 cards on top of the aces, which places them to 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th from top. Now, the sleight you're going to do now is the straddle faro shuffle. The straddle faro shuffle is like an out faro, which doubles the position of a card -1. You don't particularly need to know that, but I'm just telling you that. You could do a perfect out faro, but it's easier and quicker to do a straddle faro because I normally work with borrowed packs of cards, and borrowed packs of cards aren't normally ideal for for faro work. So I'm going to turn those aces face down, so they are 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th from top. I did a poll of magicians years ago, and it turned out that to learn the straddle faro, it took most of them a couple of days' work. So it's not as difficult as it may seem. Normally the word faro shuffle makes magicians run a mile, but I don't think you need to run a mile with this. And I think the trick itself is an incentive enough to learn the faro shuffle. You have to have a square deck. So as I'm pattering, so as I'm talking to people, I square the deck tightly so it is tight. Make sure there's no cards protruding. So I just run my fingers along the long edge, then hold tight at the edge of the deck like so. It looks like you're going to do a Hindu shuffle, but you don't. My little finger touches the bottom of the deck, and this, by the way, is the Marlowe shelf, a little finger shelf. It stops the cards from flopping around too much. That's an Ed Marlowe idea. Now, the right hand comes over, and you have to cut off at least 10 cards, which is the 6 indifferents plus the 4 aces, but I go for about 15. So remember, the aces are 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th from the top of the deck. So I cut off, have we got a good angle here? I cut off about 15 or so. Keep them square. They then have to be butted, this is Faro terminology, into the original bottom section of the deck. But it doesn't matter where they go, as long as one-on-one card interlaces perfectly with this smaller bunch. This is the bit we'll take the practice. So to get the path of least resistance and less friction, instead of doing the whole edges together, it's advisable just to do the corners like this. And the feel that you should get is like a hot knife into butter. If it's a chore to push them in, it's not working for you. And you normally find after 2 or 3 days of throwing the cards out the window in disgust, you'll eventually get it. So notice my finger helps guide the whole procedure here. So I better stand for this so that you can get the full view. Watch closely here. The edges of the deck are kind of weaved together like this. It's like a seesaw action, and the feeling is like a hot knife into butter. And there we have the perfect straddle. All right, one-on-one card is interlaced perfectly with this smaller section, which my right thumb is tapping. So, at that stage, you can see there are cards on top and bottom. Now, traditionally, you hide the Faro shuffle, but like as Harry Lorraine said, if you can't hide it, flaunt it. So I say to people, look, is that a good shuffle? In fact, there's some not quite mixed on top and them, some quite not mixed on bottom, which now gives me a rationale for holding tight with these weaved sections. Push down with your forefinger and pull out the weaved sections like this. So you pull them out together, put them on top, and then push them together, or if you want to do, you can do a waterfall. I came up with a little finesse, which would have been ideal for John Rackerbaumer's card finesse books. If he'd have done a third one, this could have gone in there, I'm sure. This little finesse makes it look like, when you do the waterfall, it looks like you're doing the whole of the deck. Now notice there's about 15 cards here which aren't part of this weaved section, but I'm going to do the waterfall flourish and make it look like the whole deck. So the thumb goes along the edge of the deck like this. If I now do the waterfall with the thumb along the edge here, facing the spectators, it looks like I'm waterfalling the whole deck. So the thumb is along the left edge. I come over, do the waterfall. It now looks like the whole deck has been shuffled, if that's what you're looking for, okay? So that's just a little finesse thing. What that has done has placed the aces to 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th from top. Because I said to you, the straddle Faro doubles the positions -1 of the cards. And the aces were originally 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, so they are now 13, 15, 17, 19th from top, which is about a third to a quarter of the way from the top of the deck. Now, you're going to do, we say WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. What you're going to do now is literally cut to the aces. Because you have 4 aces, 4 indifferent cards, you have a leeway of 8 cards here. So when you cut the deck, simply estimate yourself at about a third to a quarter of the deck. And it's one of the few tricks in the whole wide world that actually, if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. It makes you look human. So I'm going to start by getting it wrong. I'll go into pattern mode here and say, and I should be able to cut right here to the, you see folks, it's not easy. Now that doesn't matter, that phrase, it's not easy, doesn't matter. As long as you end up doing it 50 times, you don't want to be doing that. But it just means if you do get it wrong at any stage, it's not the end of the world, because it looks like you are supposed to be cutting to the aces, which essentially is what you are actually doing anyway. So don't worry about it, don't run when nobody's chasing you. So I'll just sit back down again. So watch closely here. You are going to aim for about a third of the deck, somewhere between that 13-19 block, which I talked about. Now, when you cut to the aces, I'll do this in slow motion to start with. When you cut like this, there'll either be an ace here or it'll be there. And I've just cut to the ace of hearts there. If when you cut, now use peripheral vision for this. Peripheral vision, I don't want to sound patronizing, but peripheral vision means I can see what's to my right there without staring at it. I can see what's to my left there without staring at it. You don't have to do this. Because when you say, I'm going to cut to the aces, you know you're going to cut to an ace, so you can start by saying the ace of. You can start by saying that phrase as you are cutting, because you are going to cut to the ace of something, whether it's clubs, hearts, spades or diamonds. So I shall cut to the ace of. Now, I can see the four of clubs is there at this angle here without staring at it. When I get to here, I can see it's the four of clubs. I know it's not an ace anyway, so I know the ace is there. So I can start by saying the ace of hearts. Now it looks like I know what ace I'm cutting to. So I've had magicians say, how did you know which ace you were cutting to? Well, I didn't, but with the good timing of this, it looks like you did. Let's go back to the estimation thing. Remember, there are 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th. So you are estimating yourself. If you feel the need to in the early stages to look back a little bit and do this, you can do that. But eventually you'll get the hang of it that you could actually just lean over and cut in the right position every time. So if you cut and there's no ace there, peripheral vision, I can see there's no ace there, you say the ace of clubs. All right, that's magical. Now, if you cut and the ace is there, you can say the ace of clubs because it's there. It'll either be there or there. So peel it off and table it. And you say one higher and one lower I would have missed, which is true. So you take the card off the top of the deck. So now people realise, goodness me, it could have been anywhere in the deck. Put this section back on top and put the single card back on top of the deck. You now repeat it. Now in the performance, you will have seen me say to people, do you want to square them up and make sure there's no sort of markings or anything like that? Because if you don't say something like that, people may later on discuss it amongst their friends and say, well, that was easy. They were obviously marked on the edge or something. The phrases that laymen say, you know, mark cards, that kind of thing. So I get them to check the cards out and they can say later on when they reiterate the trick to their friends, it was a regular pack of cards, he borrowed my cards and they weren't marked, he just cut to the aces. Sometimes the pattern you can use for this would be from the Maverick movie with James Garner and Mel Gibson, where he shuts his eyes and then tries to cut to an ace. You could use that kind of pattern should you so wish. Go check the movie out for the full story. You do the same with the second one. So you cut, and you should be able to cut, or you do cut to the ace of hearts. Same presentation, same pattern. One higher and one lower I would have missed. These go back here, and the single one goes on top. Now, if you were to really, and you'll see in the credits, the Marlowe credit, if you were really to cut to the third and fourth ones, it actually then becomes hard to do. This is why this is called easy ace estimation. Now, I did this little bit of business for some magicians at Tannen's. I was lecturing there some 20 odd years ago, and they said, how did you know you cut 15 cards off? I said, I didn't. And they went, oh, I see. Ken Krenzel was a magician who was fooled by this and laughed about it afterwards. Because you say, I can do it without even looking. You look away. I always look away with some kind of peripheral vision to the deck. I say, are my hands near the cards? The third ace is exactly. Now, the third ace is 15th from top, by the way. It'll always be 15th from top, the third one. It's a mathematical certainty. So the third ace, now you estimate about 15 cards, and you say the third ace is, use some acting here, as if you're weighing these. Yeah, the third ace is exactly 15th from top. You slap those down for theatrical effect. 15th from top, folks, no problem. And somebody will always say, prove it. Now, when you count to 15 cards and the 15th card is an ace, like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, when the ace is there, you say, of course, one higher and one lower I'd have missed. This extra card off the deck, by the way, you get rid of onto the top of the packet and then drop the deck on top, which brings the last ace here. But going back to the third one, it looks like you knew that you were cutting to an ace, which is what fooled Ken Krenzel and some of the other fellas at that particular convention, because I was estimating, I think 15th from top. They said, how do you cut it to 15? Well, you're just guessing, but then when you count to the 15th card and the ace is there, the assumption is that you were cutting 15 cards off. Psychological stuff, bit of acting. Okay, so for the fourth ace, which is now on the top of the deck, I produce the fourth ace. I always produce it with the Ben's ace spin cut. It's this is not a cop out, but it's almost impossible to teach on camera. I will do it slowly. You will have to replay it, but it's one of those sleights that card magicians, call a knack thing. It's hard to explain it, but the more you practice it, the angrier you get, and then finally one day it'll happen for you. I'm going to run through it, but then I will show you another way of doing it without the Ben's ace spin out. So the Ben's ace spin out, it comes from the top of the deck, and it shouldn't be a flourishy cut. It shouldn't come off the edge of the table. It should come about a foot here. So the Ben's ace spin out is like that. That's a little bit tentative, that was, because I'm doing it for the download here. But there you are, that's better. It looks like it comes from the centre of the deck, and there's the last ace. In slow motion, I'll turn it face up so you can see, this is what's happening. And you will have to replay this time and time again to see this. But there's other ways of doing it. Now, the ace is on top, and I'm holding the deck in preparation for a riffle shuffle. The right hand picks up half the deck, so I'm cutting half the deck, and I drag them to the left. My forefinger clamps onto that ace so that it stays in alignment with the bottom half of the deck. Now, this is the bit that happens in mid-air, hence difficulty in teaching it on film. That ace, you do not push it out like that. You whip crack it out like, the snap of a whip. If you're going to take a piece of rope and snap it like that, you don't just flop it and it goes like that. You snap it and it does a whip crack action. It's the same with this. The right hand does a whip crack action, and what happens is, in slow motion in mid-air, the ace pivots around this finger here, the second finger here of the right hand. It pivots like this, and it does that, and it comes out like that. As I say, that's impossible to teach on film, but let's just go through that one more time. Your right hand takes half the deck to the left. The right hand clasps, the right forefinger clasps onto that ace, which is on the top. It's in alignment with the bottom half. And if you do a whip crack action of the right hand and raising your forefinger at the same time, what happens is that spins out like that. Okay, now you're going to have to replay that and try that a lot of times. Don't be in despair when it doesn't work after the first week or so. It will come. But if you don't want to wait a week or so, remember the ace is face down. You could end with any false cut that you will. And I'll tell you about Harry Lorraine's handling of this. I do another false cut like we did earlier. I say if I give the cards 2 or 3 cuts, there's the final ace. That's the easy way of ending it, and I've already taught you that cut. Harry Lorraine rang me about 20 odd years ago and asked if he could put this routine on his DVD set, which he did. He produces the last ace from his pocket, but I prefer to keep this ace cutting routine within the deck. I think it's nicer. It's an ace cutting routine, in my opinion, and not a card to pocket routine. Here are the close-ups for the sleights used in easy ace estimation. The first one is the use of the jog shuffle. So, the 4 aces are on the top of the deck. That's easy. You need to get 6 cards on top of them, and you do it in 2 runs of 3. Sure, you could do it in 1 run of 6 cards, but I think running 6 cards, one after the other, is a tad obvious, so I do it in 2 runs of 3. So the aces are face up for description purposes only on the top of the deck. You cradle the deck in your left hand, if you're right-handed, cradle the deck in your left hand, and your left thumb is on the top section so that your right hand can come over and pick up about 3/4 of the deck, leaving about a quarter of the deck in the left hand. The first 3 cards of the right-hand section here are run on top of the aces, so 1, 2, 3. You don't count out loud, by the way. Keep it nice and silent, and don't lip sync it either, which I've seen some people do. So 3 cards are on top. In jog the next card. This is jog shuffle position, and run shuffle the remainder of the deck in 3 or 4 groups. Hold tight of the deck with the left hand, and that in jog card will now act like a spring when the deck is tight, like you have on your car or on a classy watch, an old-fashioned spring. you push up on that card, which springs the bottom section, which is the original top section with the aces, into the crotch part of the right hand. So that means you've got this big break here for the second part of the shuffle, which is to simply shuffle off these cards here and throw the original top section here back on top. So run these in groups of, say, 3 or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to the break, and the rest on top. You've now got 3 cards on top of the aces. Repeat. Okay, 1, 2, 3, in jog card, shuffle off, pick up on that break. This is the same as before. Run these cards in a few blocks and the last cards go on top. So you've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards on top of the aces. I'm going to turn the aces face down now so you can see the intricacies of the straddle faro. So the aces go face down. I'm turning them face down because it's hard to do a straddle faro with face-up cards in the deck because they act like crimps. So you've got 6 cards on top of the aces. You have to have a squared pack of cards, a squared deck. So make sure it is very squared. Just do this as you're pattering. Once it is squared, hold it in vice grip in your left hand like this. Okay? This is just very tight. No bends, no unaligned cards, misaligned cards. The right hand picks up at least 10 cards, I go for about 15, by cutting them off the deck like this. It's a straight cut. If you fiddle the cut, it'll make the cards spread. So make a nice clean cut like opening the page of a book. So let's go back to that again, cut about 15 cards or so like that. And keep those tight by holding them in vice-like grip in the right hand. Now you're going to butt the corners together of the smaller packet and the larger packet. And then you weave them a little bit seesaw action left to right like this, which makes them blend in like a hot knife into butter. So we go onto the corner here, weave them left and right, and they blend in perfectly. Let's do that again because I lost one there because of the patter. So keep nice and tight, cut off about 15 cards, and then weave them like so. Okay? There's the weave. It may, when you first do this, you're going to be frustrated with it because it won't work the first time. If it does work the first time, that's fantastic. But it's one of these knack things that will come after some practice. A few days solid practice, you should have this. So once that is interlaced, your right hand pushes down on the weaved section of cards, and then you cradle the ones that aren't shuffled, bottom and top. There's a packet there not quite shuffled. So you push down to stop these uninterlacing, pull the interlaced sections out, close the left hand, put in those 2 packets together, put these on top, and then waterfall them. And the finesse that I came up with many, many years ago is to have the left thumb down the edge here so that when you do the waterfall, it looks like the whole deck. There. That's quite a nice little illusion. It's a finesse thing. So the aces are now 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th from top. And then the cutting procedure, which we've already taught. So I will do that once again, and then we'll get into the Benze spin out. So you cut, estimate about a third to a quarter of the deck, finding the first ace. You've heard the presentation on Pat, I don't need to repeat that. Lose this extra card, like so, and repeat. Repeat again, cut, second ace. No ace there, no ace there, that goes there. The third ace is always 15th from top, so you do the look away finesse that I've used over the years. I think it's 15th from top, yep. Cut, let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. No ace there, no ace there, which leaves the last ace here. You've just got rid of the extra cover card. So the last ace is right here. I'll leave it face up for this demonstration of the Benze spin out so you can see this happening. I'll take these out of view. So the ace of diamonds is here. I'll perform it once and then I'll teach it. So the Benze spin out, the card should come out about 6 inches to a foot at the most, like that. That's maybe even better. I'll do it again for you. Whoop, it's come off the edge of the table. That's okay, we can retrieve that. And thank you very much. There's the ace. It should come out about this far. Now, the teachings behind it, it all happens in mid-air. So it's one of these knack things again that you're just going to have to do time and time again until you get it right. It's on top. The right hand comes over a la the riffle shuffle position. The right forefinger holds onto the top ace like so. The left hand cuts half the deck and drags it to the left. Now, notice this. The ace is in alignment with the original bottom half, and you've just dragged out the top half, leaving the ace in alignment with the bottom half. What you're going to do now is a whip crack action. You don't push that ace off. What you do is, as you raise your finger, your right hand does this kind of an action, like cracking a whip, and the ace will pivot on this second finger here and come out like this and end up on the table, having turned 3 or 4 times. If I was back here, we can still see this. You crack the right hand, whip crack action, and this happens. Very difficult to teach in any form, in writing or on film. But just watch this again. That's a very slow version of it. Let's do a quicker version. There. Okay. It's a lovely piece of business. And a little finesse for you. When it comes out, leave the deck like this, because the illusion is that it came from that juncture there. So leave that. Don't square up immediately. Leave it for a second before you then square it. It looks like it came from that area. And that is the Benze spin out. So that is easy ace estimation. The credits for this, Ed Marlowe, who I used to correspond with on many occasions, and I used to get parables and parables back, and pages and reams of paper back from him. I wrote to him about this, must be 35, 40 years ago when I was a young lad. And the bit he liked about this was, he liked the fact that it was easy to do for those days when you've got a grubby old deck of cards, dog-eared. It makes the faro work much easier. He liked this third ace business because if you cut to each ace one by one, it's a little bit repetitive, but you cut to the first 2 aces using the same method. The third one is theatrical and it's unusual because of what I've described to you, and the 4th ace is a finale ace, which the Benze spin out produces nicely. So Ed Marlowe is the main credit here because I first learnt this routine somewhere in the early mid-70s from Faro Controlled Miracles, which is a out-of-print rare manuscript he put out in 1964. So credit to Ed Marlowe for this routine. But this seems to have touched a nerve with many magicians over the years, because I know a lot of people use it professionally, and I hope that you do too. We hope you've enjoyed this Penguin download. If you have enjoyed it, please go to Penguin website and put a review out for it, which would be much appreciated. And thank you for watching, and all the best to you. Thank you.